So now my oxygen sensor is down here, and you can see it. And I'm just going to tighten it up. Alright, so there's a couple of things we need to do to the truck to get it ready to put the new computer in. The computer's ready to go now. So what we need to do next is we need to delete the EGR valve system, and we also need to install the new wideband oxygen sensor. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to work on is removing the actual EGR valve and put the block off the panel that I have here on here. Take that off, and also take the solenoid off over here. So this is all going to come out. Since we're working with electrical stuff, let's disconnect the battery first. Now comes the solenoid first. There, solenoid's out. Now I'm removing the vacuum lines that ran the solenoid. We don't need those anymore. Now it's time for the EGR valve to come out. All right, we're almost out with the EGR valve. There we go. Out comes EGR. I know that there are those out there that say you gotta have the EGR because the engine's not going to run right. Now, let me clarify a few things. If you decide to delete your EGR like I did, it's my opinion that you need to go to the kind of computer that I'm now using, where you can take into consideration that this has been removed, and the new profile in the computer will take that into account. And then you can make the engine burn as efficiently as possible. Now, of course, everybody's got an opinion about this, but let me just recap what the EGR does. The EGR puts exhaust gas, inert gases, back into the combustion chamber, and the reason that they do that is because they want to lower the temperature of the burn inside the combustion chamber. They're not doing this to lower the temperature for the piston or the valves. They're doing this because they want to lower the temperature in there so they can reduce the kind of emission that's coming out the tailpipe. Okay, now you can look at it a couple of different ways, and the way I look at it is this. Without the EGR, now the burn is going to be a little bit hotter, it's going to be a little bit cleaner, and it's going to be more complete. You're going to get more power, and you're going to thus use less gas to do the same job. When you have the inert gases in there lowering the temperature, you're making the combustion chamber work harder in order to accomplish the same task. Thus, you're going to have to burn more gas. Okay, now that's my opinion. I'm sure the engineers out there have got their 2 cents about it, but this is what I've decided to do on my truck. Well, looks pretty good, doesn't it? Nice job. Billet aluminum. So I removed the oxygen sensor, which is a narrowband oxygen sensor. It has 4 wires inside. So I can put my new oxygen sensor, the wideband, and that has 6 wires. So they did provide me with a couple of set of instructions. I can hook it up to the old connection on the harness, but I have to do some rewiring on the harness. Or they gave me another harness wire that goes far enough to go back all the way up to the computer. So I'm going to make some decisions on which way I want to wire this new oxygen sensor. So this is the next step. Let's get the oxygen sensor done. Now, after doing a little bit of research, I've come to understand something. The wideband oxygen sensor has to have a controller, and they had sent me the controller. So this has got to get installed into the truck, and they give you a couple of different ways to do it. You can tie this into the existing wiring for the O2 sensor, but you're going to have to do some special things. I've decided to go ahead and use the option where I'm going to, they give me a lot of wire, so I'm going to route this wire up to where the computer is inside the truck. And I'm going to splice into or tee into the correct wires for the computer that these need to be attached to. And it gives me a guide in my instructions, which I'm printing out so that I can take it out to the truck with me. All right, so let's get this controller installed so we can get the oxygen sensor attached. Now that I've decided how I'm going to install my controller, I'm going to go ahead and route this wire inside to where the computer is. Okay, let me show you something. We got to go in here. Underneath here is where the computer is. We got to take the old computer out, and behind that computer there is a bunch of wires. And the wire connections for the computer going up to the engine are in here. And we have to get the new wire for the controller to come through there and come out here next to the computer, and that bundle in the middle, right in back of the computer. So we're going to push that through there. We're also going to push a vacuum line through there as well for the computer map sensor. Okay, so now I have the line for the oxygen sensor run through up to the computer, and I also have the vacuum line that's going to be for the map sensor on the new computer. Now let's take the old computer out and get ready to put the new one in. So I've already loosened it, so the old one is out. No more OBD1 computer. Now, I've got this bundle of wires coming into the computer in the harness. And so what I'm going to have to do next is take my wires for the oxygen sensor and find the correct wires to tie them into for the wiring harness. I'm not worried about modifying the wiring harness because this is going to be a permanent installation for me. So I'm not going to be worried about going back to factory. This is going to be a much better setup. Okay, now that we've got these out and both of the lines going through the firewall, we're ready to do the wiring for the oxygen sensor. All right, now before we go any further, I've got my wires labeled so that I know where to tie them into the harness. But let's go ahead and pause on this here because I need to make sure I pull this wire through so that we don't have extra wire hanging in the engine compartment. So let's go ahead and install the oxygen sensor so we can get the wire and the vacuum line secured. Alright, so I've learned a thing or two since I crawled under the car to put the oxygen sensor where the old one came out. And that is, with a wideband oxygen sensor, you want to mount it so that it's in a more vertical, not totally vertical, but a more vertical position instead of like the original one was where it was coming from underneath. So it was inverted. So what's going to happen if it's inverted with the wideband oxygen sensor is water condensation can get into the sensor, and as it heats up it can create problems. So they want us to mount it in a more pointed up attitude. So I was looking at my exhaust system, and they had a block on a hole for an oxygen sensor that is at about the 10 o'clock position, which will work out perfect for us. So I'm going to take the little block out of there, put the oxygen sensor in there, and put the whole block in the bottom hole where the original oxygen sensor was. So now my oxygen sensor is down here, and you can see it, and I'm just going to tighten it up. So now the physical side of the install is nearly complete. I've got the new oxygen sensor in, I've run the wire for the controller along with it back into the void where the computer is. I ran my extra vacuum line that needs to be added. So all of the stuff in the engine compartment is pretty well finished. So let's continue with wiring. Thanks for watching The American Garage. If you liked this video, hit the like button and leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe.